Good evening. My name is Paul. I'm Frameline's Director of Exhibition and Programming. Welcome to Frameline44. It's on for a few more days. We end this Sunday, September 27th, so make sure you check out some of the films before you can't see them again for a while. Tonight is our Q&A for our centerpiece film, The Obituary of Tunde Johnson. There'll be time for audience questions. Please comment your questions on CineSend, Frameline, and YouTube where you're watching this. Okay, without further ado, please meet our guests from The Obituary of Tunde Johnson. Good evening. Hi, Stanley and Ali. Please can you introduce yourselves and tell us your role in the film?
Do you want to go first, Ali? Or should I? My name is Stanley Kalu. I'm the writer of the film.
And I'm Ali LeRoi. I am the director of the film.
Good evening and welcome.
Hey.
What's up?
First off, I have to say thanks to both of you for making this film. After the awful Breonna Taylor news yesterday, that news highlights again how important your film is. I just wanted to pay respect to that.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
First questions are about how this film came to be, and is a two-part question. Stanley, please can you tell us where the idea for the script came from and the process of writing it? And Ali, can you tell us what you thought after you read the script for the first time and how you came to direct it?
Right. All right. So I was actually just talking about this today. I think, I lived as a majority for 18 years, and it was extremely strange to come into a space where I was an individual and then stripped of my individuality and became this like monolithic black man with all the violence and such attached to that. And it led to a real depression for, the first 2 years of my college experience. And so I became very aware, within the American psyche, that there was a distinct attack on identity. And so when I was constructing the idea and constructing the script, it really came down to how can I make an intersectional film that focuses on a human being, right? Rather than statistics. So it really came out of that space, and I was really trying to climb out and render and understand the violence that I was feeling, both on a socio-political level and on a personal, emotional level within a country that really despises anyone that's an other. At the end of the day, so I wrote it in class. I wrote it sophomore year, screenwriting class at USC, and it kind of developed from there. Yeah.
Yeah, the screenplay actually came through a screenplay competition called Launch. The producers of the film, Jason Schumann and Zachary Green, brought me in, amongst a few other people, as judges for the competition. I mean, we looked at a lot of material, and when we got down to what the final scripts were, there was some good stuff in there, some buddy comedies, and some road trip stuff, but this particular film was something that I had never seen before. I had never seen anything like it, and just in terms of not just the subject matter, but the approach to the material, the writer himself. There were all of these things that I just felt like, okay, any of these other films that were, finalists in this competition, there were types of films that were going to get made, that have been made, that I've seen before. And I just felt like this particular film was something special, different, and this unique situation that we found ourselves in gave us the opportunity and the power to make a decision to do something different. And so, I was a strong advocate for the script as a finalist, and, through a variety of discussions, we ultimately did come to the conclusion that, that this would be the winning script in the competition. And at that point, I thought I was done. And after that, number of weeks, maybe a month, Zach and Jason approached me, since I had been such a strong advocate for the material, and asked me if I wanted to direct it. And it was a no-brainer for me. I'm like, yes, absolutely, please. I want to direct this film. I just felt like it was something to nurture, protect, and bring to an audience with a lot of faith and a lot of vision. And it feels like we did a really good job with it.
Indeed, you did. Congratulations. I'm sure our audience really loved the film as well.
Thank you.
And another question for Stanley. The loop structure that happens works really seamlessly. Can you tell us why you decided on using this particular device? That it doesn't happen so often in films. In the odd films you see it, but we don't see it that often, to be honest.
Right. Look, like, it's a very clear thing at the end of the day. The cycle of Black Death within America is plain and simple. So, as a 19-year-old coming in with fresh eyes, I just understood very quickly that not only was violence against Black bodies cyclical, literally time loopy, every day. It's someone else that looks like me. It's someone else that looks like me. It's someone else with my skin color. Also, the nature of how it's treated is cyclical as well. So, the idea that history repeats itself, particularly when it comes to violence against Black bodies, was just really obvious to me. And, when I was trying to approach this content, it really just came hand in hand. It wasn't even, it wasn't really about a film convention or a genre convention necessarily. It just came out of, that's exactly what it is. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah,
so that's really where it develops from.
Cool. And Ali, the casting in particular of Stephen Slater as Tunde really works very, very well. Can you tell us about the casting process and how you got him in the film and how you achieved the great performances from him and the rest together?
Well, we had a lot of great young actors come in and audition for these pieces, and part of the process was not just finding somebody who embodied, the character and spirit of Tunde, but also the chemistry, with other actors. So there was a process that we went through, and Stanley was present for a lot of it, where I would have Stephen audition with these chemistry tests with other actors, performing the role of Soren, and then other actors performing Soren, performing the role with different characters playing Tunde. And ultimately, Stephen's approach to the material and his nuance, and even how he came to the audition, he just had a certain magnetism to him. He had a certain charisma, and he had what I would call a kind of like a deft touch, because the idea is also of identification and what that looks like now is very, very different from the sort of stereotypical presentations that we have seen, in cinema and television, over the years. And so it's much more reflective and realistic and nuanced now, or at least it can and should be. And Stephen embodied a lot of that. And with Spencer, initially, and I say this to him, it's like initially I didn't think that he was the right type for this role, but ultimately what I loved about him is that, first of all, he's like this crazy handsome guy, right? And Spencer dyed his hair blonde for the role, so naturally he's like a light brown hair color, something like that, and that actually made him look a little bit more like a jock. But when he dyed his hair blonde, certainly he became like this James Dean Heartbreak Handsome type of a character, and he fit right into the space of the jock, and he brought he really, to me, embodied this notion of the guy trying to mask you know, who he is and how he moves through the world. And they were just really compelling. They had great chemistry together. They were incredibly open and available as actors. And, you know, in working with Stanley and trying to get the words and the ideas right, you know, and working with them and trying to make them feel safe and protected, you know, in this space so that they could actually give themselves over to the role was not a super complicated process, because I felt particularly sensitive to what their performances needed to be and how they needed to feel naturalistic in order to be, you know, convincing and gain some empathy for what both of them were experiencing in the course of this film. It just it took a lot of sitting and thinking and really being sensitive to all of the nuance, because it's not a big splashy movie. It's very quiet, you know, and it's all about the detail. It's all about the attention to the little things that are happening. And we don't treat the time loop as like this big gimmick, right? Tunde does not go into this thing as, oh, I'm caught in a time loop, I got to figure out the way out. That's not what he's doing. You know, he's becoming aware of it and becoming aware of how the things are shifting and grasping the notion that his reality is fractured, and then trying to not figure out how to get out of it, but really trying to figure out how to manage it. And in the doing, it brings him to a position at the end of the film that, you know, in a lot of ways, you know, I think is incredibly satisfactory. And, you know, Stanley did an amazing job, you know, crafting what that idea is. And for me, I was really just trying to honor the material.
And you spoke briefly in your answer about being protective on set. Can you both tell me about what the atmosphere was like on set and how you ensured it was good for yourselves and the actors? Because there's some very, very tough scenes to have filmed.
Yeah, I can talk about that real quick. You know, it's very rare, from what I hear, um, that a set feels like family. Every single, me and the actors are really good friends. Me and Ali are great friends. Me and Zach are great friends. We really had a bond, and I think that like comes off in the screen. You know, there was just a lot of love on set. Um, just so much love on set, because I think we were all working towards like the greater good, and everyone down from the grips to the gaffers to the technicians were really understood the nature of the work, and like pushed themselves past, you know, their own limitations. I think because of a deeper understanding that we were doing something special and doing something important. Um, so yeah, it was beautiful, really.
You know, and for me, you know, this was Stanley's first feature, and you
So
know, filmmaking politics a lot of times removes writers from the process of production and filming, and treat them like, you know, their persona non grata. And I felt like that was impossible to do with this movie. You know, Stanley had such a very specific and particular approach to the material and a vision and perspective on it that nobody else had. Right? You know, I'm black. I'm a man. I live in America. I've dealt with systemic racism, and I've seen all of the things that he's seen, but not in the way that he's seen them. So, in order to speak to, you know, the generation that he's in, and who ostensibly he's speaking to, you know, I didn't want it to feel like, you know, some 50-year-old guy trying to pander to a younger generation and tell them what's supposed to be important about the experience that they're going through. There's an old song by David Bowie called Changes. And there's a line in it that goes, and these children that you spit on as they try to change their world are immune to your consultations. They're quite aware of what they're going through. And that's how I felt about this film, right? So it was very important to have Stanley there as a meter of what felt right. right? Visually, texturally, performance, the tech part, all of these other things that I helped to construct, even in terms of the decorum of the set and, who got hired and why and how we interacted with one another. I would dare say I didn't have, and I don't have a lot of ego about being in the director space because I feel secure in my choices. And because I feel secure in my choices, that actually allows me to be open to other people's ideas because I can pick what I need to help realize and make whole the idea. And so there was a really collaborative, familial, and sensitive effort to do the material justice because that's why we were there.
Excellent. And also on set, were there any changes to the script daily? How did you work through those together?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was busting out like, man, that's actually like such a crazy question because this entire process, like I write, like I can write mad fast. Let me tell you, I was in the trailer, just like rewriting monologues, like touching up like lines, like switching things around. Like it was, we did this in 16 days at the end of the day. So like the pace of it was really crazy. And I'm really glad that we managed to hold this thing together, not only visually and like, through production, but really from a writing perspective that the story still.
No, listen. So I'm also a musician, and so while I am not proficient at jazz in any shape, form, or fashion, what I understand about the nature of it is when you have a grasp of the foundation of a piece, right? And that's chord structures and melodies and tempos and and the colors of what it is. When you have skilled musicians, and in this case, you have a piece and you have skilled actors and you're a great writer. You're able to veer away from like the original text in the sense that I know what this is about.
Right.
I know what we're trying to get at. So then, I think Stanley had a lot of instances where I wouldn't say that he was protective of his words in as much as he hadn't had the experience of being challenged to push past his own comfort.
Right.
So sometimes the amount of time that he would be able to spend crafting an idea, to me, could work against him because he was almost putting too much thought into it. It's like, because, a script is like sheet music, right? So if you write down a guitar solo and you hand it to, I don't know, to Eric Clapton, it sounds like one thing. You hand it to Prince, it sounds like something else. It's the same piece of music. And
Right.
so the thing is to get like this structural integrity and make sure it works in the context of the larger piece, the larger composition. Then you have to let the performers do what they do. They have to bring it to life. I think the most interesting sequence we had in the entire film is towards the end when we're finally in the loop sequence where Tunde explains to Marley, that he's gay and that he has a relationship with Soren, and she's shocked and she challenges Soren, and then Soren goes and challenges Tunde about why he exposed them, and a lot of that material was improvised on the foundation of what Stanley had written. So they weren't making up, dialogue wholesale. That's not what was happening. But when we got to that point in the film, what I was able to say to all of the actors was, okay, you know who your character is. You know what the story is about. You know what this moment is. At that point, for me, it's like, go act. I'm not going to stop you and say this thing instead of that thing. It's like, fucking be in the moment, be there, talk to each other, challenge each other, get to where you need to go. And I'm going to let these cameras roll and you be in that moment. And that final exchange between Tunde and Soren, when Tunde is challenging Soren to go in and come out to Soren's dad, it was written, but it wasn't. We really let them go. We put the cameras on them, put them in the scene, and just said, Your goal is to get him to go in this house. You don't want to go. Act. And it was just really one of the most amazing sequences. And it's not to detract or diminish at all what Stanley had written, but at that point, you're trying to bring it alive, and the energy that you're looking for, and the interaction and the emotion and the empathy. I think by giving them some guardrails, but letting them embody these characters in that moment is what makes that scene believable and electric and passionate. And I hope for Stanley, in seeing something like that, and understanding that as a director, you're going to get challenged around your ideas as a writer, but the goal is to service the actors and the film. They're all pieces, right? And so I think we were able to create a great chemistry and came to some really fantastic moments.
Indeed. And audience, if you have any questions, we're going to take audience questions in a few minutes. Please leave your questions in the comments on Facebook, YouTube, and CineSend. A question for both of you. I love this quote in the film from a critic about the 400 blows.
Right.
At the end, you are no longer looking at the film is looking at you.
Yes, sir.
For me, it really sums up the film. Can you both tell us what this line means to you in regard to your film?
Do you want to go, Ali, or should I?
You should. It was your idea.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, at the end of the day, the film is a challenge to its audience in like a very real sense. The idea that cyclical violence against Black bodies is a new thing is simply wrong. We've seen it. You see it in the film. You see it. And it asks you why you stop caring at some point. It really challenges, the numbness that we feel when we witness violence on that level. And that's why that like last death really feels so powerful, because then we get really up close, and you have an idea, oh man, no, this is a human being. So I think the entire experience of watching this is a challenge to its audience. And look, like all the content, the entire thing is challenging material. It really is like looking at society and asking it, why would you treat a human being as less than? Why would you treat, that's just it. Why would you treat a human being as less than on any level? And I think that's what it means to me, It's addressing the idea that when a person dies, you lose a universe. A person is not just a person, but has family and has ancestors. And to like really, I wanted the audience to understand that like Black death is not a statistic, it's a human being. And that's what it's looking at. And that's why it's looking back at you at the end of the day,
Yeah, I mean, we have, we watch the news every day. We see the cycle of violence. And what we have to be 100% clear about is that there is selective concern. I was having a conversation with somebody earlier, and a lot of people are too young to remember when the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded on launch, in the 80s, or when the Space Shuttle Columbia came back from orbit in the 2000s and exploded on reentry. When those tragedies occurred, what NASA did is that they combed the ground and the sea, and they found all the pieces of the shuttles that had disseminated over these pieces of land, and they were burned and charred, and they reassembled and they figured out, and they painstakingly went through every step of the process on the launch and the reentry and figured out everything that everybody did, so they could determine why these shuttles exploded and why did these astronauts have to die. And they fucking figured it out. You know why? Because astronaut lives matter. That's why they figured it out. There was no constraints on time. There was no constraints on money. There was no constraints on all of the resources and intellect that they could bring to bear to make sure if we're going to explore space and send our valuable American astronauts up there to do our bidding, what we want to believe or know or trust is that we're going to be able to bring them back alive. And when something happened that they didn't plan on, they figured out how and why it happened. And guess what? There's no third shuttle explosion. It didn't happen. So after death, 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 we still can't figure out how and why people are dying at the hands of officers in all of these wide varieties of scenarios. And what I will say is that at the moment of impact, so to speak, when officers come to Breonna Taylor's apartment and there's mayhem, gunfire ensues, and she's dead, that's the explosion. The problem began before they even headed over there. The problem began in the way that she was viewed as a person. The problem began in the way that we deal with crime in society. The problem began with how we adjudicate what those crimes are and how people are supposed to be punished for them and who's supposed to be punished for them and why and when and how and who do we, use violence against and what are we prepared for? All those things happened before they even got to that building. By the time they got there, it was fucking too late. It was. And so that, as the film is looking at us, I think that we're in this exchange between content and our society, and art imitates life and life imitates art. And at some point, it's not imitation, it's us. We created it all. And it's all happening because of our choices. It's all happening because of our beliefs. And what does happen happens because we want it to. And what does not happen because we don't want it to. That's why.
Yeah, thanks for that answer. And the film ends with Tunde looking at the audience, so it sums up exactly what you were both saying in the quotes. The perfect end of the film as well.
You know what's funny? We came up with the ending to that film on the day, and it's so weird because I had created enough sort of distance from what Stanley was writing because I didn't want to be forced into doing things visually because of what he wrote. But at the same time, I naturally went to this space. I didn't tell Steven to look into the camera like that at the end of that shot. That's not what I told him to do. We had shot a bunch of stuff before that, and he came and he walked out of the distance and came, and when he looked, he gave us this expression, and I mean, it was just, for me, it was just riveting. It was another one of those just really, really special moments, and as it should happen, it really tied in well with the 400 blows moment. But at that point on that beach, when we were shooting it, that's not what I was thinking about.
Okay, we've got time for some questions from the audience. We have one from Cinesen from Bruce. How has the current Black Lives Matter movement after George Floyd affected recent demand and reaction to this film, which was filmed prior to these most recent events?
I don't know, doesn't seem to have changed it. I mean, we're having some traction in some conversations with distributors. And I think we're getting closer to getting it on one of the platforms. I mean, you can turn on Netflix or Amazon or Apple or anything now, and you can find a perfectly fluffy film about some shit that's got nothing to do with what's going on in this world. And I'm not saying that all of the content that we see needs to speak to what we're going through, but certainly at this point in time, I would think, and I just believe, a responsible outlet would say, people need to see this. When Black Square Tuesday came along and all the various corporations put a black square up on their Instagram page talking about how they want to support and promote diversity and black stories. It's like, hey, y'all, I just want to let you know we got a fine black story here about some shit that's happening right now. And the amount that it would cost you to put this film on is going to be less than what it's going to cost you to get Tom Cruise his lunch on the next Mission Impossible movie. And I'm not saying that to be coy. I'm not saying that to be facetious. I'm saying that's probably a matter of fact. that if you actually went into the budget and saw how much it's going to get you to feed this guy for the, 80 days that you're on set. And I'm not saying that it's not justified for him to do that. I'm just saying that what it would cost to present this film to the public at large with integrity and intent and back up the shit you're saying when you post this black square on Instagram for a day is minuscule compared to the amount of money that you spend on the variety of things that you care about in this business. I've been to rap parties with ice sculptures that's going to cost more than our entire film cost. And it's a challenge. It's like, I'm just fucking throwing down the gauntlet. It's like, do something. Quit saying you're going to do something and do something.
Yeah, it's true. It's all true. Another question from Cine Sand. Screening at Toronto must have been amazing. Tell us about that experience.
Stanley got more fun than I did.
I feel like I had a different experience than Ali. I was up late every night. No, look. So first of all, Toronto was a dream come true, in like a very real sense. Not only was the film playing, and it's the red carpet, and you get applause, and I was doing my first interviews, and at the end of the day, just like meeting my heroes, like going to parties and like really being like next to them, and having like real conversations with filmmakers and actors and like creators that like I only thought really existed behind the screen. So it was remarkable. It was also just remarkable to just get so well reviewed out of that, It was, man, like for your first film, for your first script that you ever wrote, to get, to go that far, and to really be able to live out your dreams. Yeah, Toronto was incredible. Like literally one of the best things that's ever happened to me.
This is actually my first feature directing. I mean, I've directed a lot of episodic television, and the way that this came about was an incredibly unique experience. My bigger joy, as much as I appreciated, everything that happened in terms of the response to the film, and it was incredible to be accepted, into the program at TIFF. So that was fantastic. But I actually had most of my fun watching Stanley have a good time. Like I really, like I've come to feel like like a uncle or a big brother or something, and I've just really had it brings me a lot of joy to see Stanley move through this space in this way, and I'm glad to be able to be there with him and for him. Sometimes as counsel, sometimes as a partner in crime, and being there together doing what we were doing. It's just, it's one of my great memories.
Yeah, sadly, we're running out of time, so I'm going to ask one more audience question. Okay, the classic. What impact do you hope your film has on the world?
Stanley.
That's a pretty large thing. Look, like when I was writing it, I just wanted, people to feel less alone at the end of the day. Like there's a lot of people struggling, like a lot of others, whether you're an immigrant, whether you're Black, or whether you're whatever, honestly, that struggle to feel represented, to see themselves and to see their issues on screen at the end of the day. And I really wanted kids to not feel alone. And then secondly, I hope people understand and empathize, and then actually like put things in place, put actions in place to really quell the amount of violence against Black bodies. This shit's crazy. People are dying every day. We need to really look at ourselves as a society, really look at our forms of policing, look at the militarization of the police, like review your own internalized racism so that we can make spaces safe for Black people. I really hope this film makes spaces safe for Black people.
I mean, and I'll actually go a step further. I've said this to Stanley before, as as foundational to the film as Tunde's experience is for me, in a lot of ways, I left the film really feeling sorry for Soren. The reason being is what we understand in the iterations of the time loops is that Soren is in this performative space, hiding who he is because he's afraid of how he will be not accepted in the world, but accepted in his own house, right? And what he doesn't realize that we've seen in an iteration of Tunde's experience is that this is actually something, who he is and how he needs to live is something that his father is actually available to and open to, because we've seen it with Tunde. But Soren doesn't know that. And so it's just this idea that because people, exist in these performative spaces, this guy goes on TV and acts like he's a guy that he's really not. So he's doing just as much damage in his own house, creating a kid that needs to go and pretend like somebody he's not. And then he's damaging this girl. And then this girl has this impression that she needs to move through a way. And she's not the person who she's pretending to be. And so it's just this idea of the elevation of truth and the power of having integrity and belief and empathy for not only who you are, but for who other people are. Those notions, if people could walk away feeling like, me being who I am is not a threat to anybody, and me embracing other people empowers not just them, but it also empowers me. And ultimately, I do believe, Rodney King was right. He's like, can we all just get along? I get it. And in theory, we could, but we can't do it if people are afraid. And if this film in some way, any kind of way, challenges people to confront the fears that they have in themselves that prevent them from being open and available and empathetic and caring about somebody else, if we could do that, that's a big, high ideal, but I think it would be a great thing.
A massive thanks, Stanley. A massive thanks, Ali. And viewers, make sure you tell your friends, family, whoever, that The Obituary of Tunde Johnson is on till Sunday. Spread the word. We want the film seen widely, and we want the film picked up, so spread the word. And again, Stanley, Ali, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it
so much.
All right.
All right. Peace.